Welcome to my masterclass on story techniques for facilitation. Stories are fantastic. If you go way back in time since we first started talking to each other, stories have always been really, really important to human society, to evolution, sharing knowledge, communication. And we've evolved to tell stories. We love stories still today. That's why there's such a craze for reality TV and fantastic films and books and so on. Now, stories are great in workshops because you can use them in your sessions to create a sense of community. You can use them to help delegates tap into their imagination and creativity, explore possibilities, and also have some fun, because storytelling can be fun as well, and you'll see that in the techniques that I'm going to share with you. Now, stories are words and pictures. It's not just about words. And it's really important to include pictures in story activities because, I don't know if you knew this, our brain processes images 60,000 times faster than we do text. And 90% of the information transmitted to our brain is visual. So images are really important, and whenever we're getting our delegates to think visually and to use images, then we're activating all sorts of different parts of their minds, their brains. And also we can use stories to put the customer or the user at the heart of what it is we're trying to do. So say your workshop is on new process design, maybe it's a new product or service, something like that. You can use story to put yourselves in the user's shoes, or get delegates to put themselves in the user's or the customer's shoes and imagine life from their perspective. So story is a really great device to use. And I just want to start off by talking to you about the hero's journey, which is a concept that was really made famous by the writer Joseph Campbell. I don't know if you've heard of Joseph Campbell, but his book is quite a tome. It was really fascinating. And he's looked at all sorts of different stories, going back from ancient mythology through to the time that he was writing, and noted that in every story, every great story, there's a hero's journey. The hero has a call to adventure. There's usually some sort of thing in the universe, some supernatural aid or some event, something happens. And that means that the hero of the story needs to go from what they know into what they don't know. They cross a threshold, which is a beginning of a transformation. And that's where the story comes in. It's that transformational journey from where the hero is now to where they're going, and how that influences them and affects them forever going forward. The hero often finds a mentor, has to deal with challenges and temptations and make decisions and choices along the way. And all of that, sort of takes them to a low, but out of that, the hero climbs, comes stronger, transformed, better, and returns with this gift of this experience into the known world again. And is a different person, is marked and affected and has some growth from that experience. And when you think about it, so many great stories follow that, don't they? One of my favourites is Paulo Coelho's The Alchemist, which is absolutely that story. The work of Tolkien, Harry Potter, and actually a lot of, even a reality TV show will follow that sort of hero's journey. What you can do is use that hero's journey concept. This is something that I found on a website called Gamestorming, and you can use the hero's journey to actually plan the agenda for your workshop. You can design activities for your day that take your delegates through the hero's journey. So they come in, they're in their ordinary life, thinking about work, maybe just done some emails or some phone calls before they get in the room. Actually, what you need to do is then get them into this new environment, give them a call to action, a fantastic challenge, a fire starter, an opening, get them engaged in what you're doing, working with each other, with a facilitator as maybe a helper and a guide and a mentor to take them through the process. What are the problems and the pitfalls? How can they be overcome? What are the solutions? You think, and this is feeling really hard maybe at some points of the workshop, but actually then you get delegates to push through, find the solutions. They're feeling great because they've actually cracked it, and they go back knowing that they've made significant progress with something that's really meaningful. And you can do that in a learning environment, you can do it in innovation and problem solving, you can do it when you're trying to bring teams together. So that hero's journey agenda is a really nice format to use when you're planning and designing your workshops. What I'm going to go into now, though, are 9 different creativity techniques that you can use that are all based on story, and you can use in different ways in your sessions. Now, I'm not suggesting that you have a whole day based on story or that you use all of these techniques in the same day. Probably please don't, actually, but just maybe you curate a few of them and drop them in at the right places just to add some variety and even more creativity into the work that you're doing. So creative technique number 1, we've talked about this a lot inside our Time Academy, haven't we? Storyboarding. It's a really simple technique, super straightforward to use and very effective. If you want to look at some great storyboards, I recommend that you go to the Pixar website. Just Google Pixar, Pixar storyboarding, and you'll see some fantastic examples of how they do it for their animations. But your delegates don't need to be as artistic as that. Ask your delegates to draw 6 or 9 squares. In the first square, they put where they are, and in the final square, the 6th or the 9th, depending on how many you've asked them to draw, they draw their, where they want to end up, their vision of where they want to be. And then in the squares in between, they create the scenes that show how they're going to get from where they are now to where they want to be, using words and pictures. Really lovely technique. I've used that technique a lot, and it gets people talking. Also, it gets them problem solving together because they're thinking, how do we put this into a story? What's the sequence? What comes first? What comes next? How do we show that in pictures? So really good interactive technique to use. Technique number 2 is really got some bonus techniques in it, actually, because these are Rory's story cubes. You can see a picture of them there. Now, I have no affiliation connection. I don't know who Rory is. I just like his story cubes. You can buy Rory's story cubes from somewhere like Amazon or online, and they're just fantastic. What they are is they're little dice, as you can see in the image, and each side of the dice there's a different picture, and you can get different story cube sets. I think there's a heroes one, an actions one, a fantasia one, so they've got different themes. So delegates roll them, they fall with different pictures, and delegates use those different pictures in their thinking. So here are how you can use them. Firstly, a warm-up or an energizer. So every person to throw 3 of the cubes and make a true story with the images on the cubes. Try and link this to the theme of your workshop. So if it's leadership, you might do a story around leadership. If it's on customer experience, make it around customer experience, and so on. You can use it as a quick icebreaker. So just give everybody 1 cube and get them to throw that 1 cube, and they've got to introduce themselves and give a personal fact that is connected with the picture on the cube. It's fantastic for collaboration as well. So if you get each person in a small group to throw 1 cube and then ask everybody to create a story together based on the cube that they've thrown. So for instance, if there are 3 of us, 1 person might throw the cube and get a sunshine, and they tell a part of the story which involves sunshine. The next person may throw a cube which has a horse, so the horse comes into the story, and the third person may throw a cube with a castle, and they bring in an extension which shows the castle in the story. Every individual throws something, talks about what they've thrown, and puts that into the story. You can use story cubes as well for unblocking. Use them as needed throughout the session, just to, okay, we're all a bit stuck, let's throw some story cubes, let's see what the cubes come out, let's create some stories around our theme, and then go back to what you're working on. And actually just thinking about words and pictures and thinking differently and giving people a break means that when they come back to doing what they were doing before, unblocks them and helps them think differently. You only need to spend a few minutes doing that, but it can make a difference. And the other nice way of using these story cubes is for user experience stories. So use the cubes in small teams and ask the team to create real user experiences based on the pictures on their cubes. And actually very recently I've run a customer experience workshop where we've been looking to really level up the customer experience that a business provides, and the team were rolling story cubes and making new stories for customers about how the service is going to improve. And that was really good fun, but also quite thought-provoking as well. We got some new ideas out of that, so really good thing to do. I hope you like using those story cubes. Give them a go. Third creative technique is what I've called Parable of the Talents reimagined, and it sounds more complicated to write down or listen to than it actually does to do in practice. It's really simple in practice, but communicating it is more challenging. So all you ask delegates to do is to draw and write, create a story of their life on a flip chart in 10 minutes. It sounds quite a task, doesn't it? But that's fine, they can do that. I say 10 minutes, usually, to be honest, it takes them 15. But if I say 10 minutes then and plan for 15, that usually works out pretty well. Delegates create their own story. They work on their own. They can start their story at any point. So they can go as far back as they like, or start it at the age of 18 or whenever. And what you're asking them to do is to highlight the key points on the way, the things that they've learned from, the pivotal moments, the things that they're proud of. And of course, delegates only need to share the things they want to share. Nobody has to share anything that they don't want to. They do their story up to today, and then I ask them to extend it into the future and populate their story with their hopes, their aspirations for where they would really like to move forward. And that's super powerful. What happens next is that the delegates will share their stories, they present back. And while they're sharing, a lovely thing to do is to ask the delegates who are listening to the person presenting to grab some post-it notes and listen in for strengths and talents in everybody's story. They write every strength or talent onto a post-it note, and then at the end of the session, I create a big talent matrix on a flip chart, which is just full of all the strengths and talents that people have spotted and identified. And I ask them to find at least 3 per person. You can ask them for more. And also, when people have told their stories, it's really nice because they get all this feedback and they see things in their story that they haven't seen before in terms of how special they are and the things they've achieved. So that's really a lovely thing to do. The next technique, number 4, bearing in mind we've got 9, technique number 4 is experts or user stories. And really simply, instead of getting an expert in or a customer in to just present or talk about what they do or share their expertise, you can ask them to do this in the form of a story. You can say, tell us about a time when, share your experience when. So their stories are based on their real experiences. And you ask them for specific examples. Can you think of a time where you used our product? What did you use it for? Tell us about it. How did you use it? You can ask people who are experts to share a time where they really needed to use a particular area of expertise. So if it's in leadership, you could say, can you tell us a time where you really had to bring servant leadership to the fore and it made you really think about your leadership. So asking people for real life examples and experiences is a form of telling a story. And by asking that, you will get a different experience. And in this slide here, I detail how to do that and how to talk delegates through that process. People love telling their stories. We all love, having the opportunity to share things that are important to us, things we've experienced, things we're good at. So by getting your delegates to tell stories, they're enjoying it as well. It benefits everybody. Creative technique number 5 is a day in the life. And this is similar to the one we've just had in number 4, but slightly different. So this is especially suitable for people who are coming together to start or work on a project. Maybe you want to improve collaboration in a team, or you want to generate different understanding. Maybe we've got different organisations coming together who are all working on something, some sort of joint venture or shared project as well. And really simply, people share the story of a day in their life. You ask them to communicate that visually, and it helps build mutual understanding. So ask delegates to create a visual storyboard that represents a typical day for them at work. Stick figures are fine. This isn't about, none of this actually is about having a great ability to draw and, to create Van Gogh stuff or anything. And ask each delegate to talk through their storyboard and share it, and then everybody creates a joint summary of the insights that they've learned from listening to each other's day in the life of. Creativity technique number 6 is story of transformation. And I would use this technique towards the end of the workshop when the delegates have generated all their ideas and they've selected and developed the most promising ideas. And all you do is ask delegates to tell the story of how the customer or user experience will be transformed from what it is now to the new improved version once the new ideas are in place, making the customer or the user the hero of the story. And that's really important, to put the customer or the user at the centre of the story. And if you're doing a training event, maybe on leadership or coaching, you put the person being coached at the centre of the story. You put the people who are at the receiving end of the leadership at the centre of the story in terms of what they're going to experience from the new improved leadership approach. Give delegates some time to prepare the story and ask them to create posters to show the transformation. And I like to use old newspapers and magazines for this, and drawing and writing and putting all those different media together. Creativity technique number 7 is to create a tweetable. It's so useful to be able to distill ideas down to their simplest and purest form, and having constraints around how you express those ideas can really help do that. Einstein said, make things as simple as possible and no simpler, and creating a tweetable helps you to do that. What I ask delegates to do towards the end of the workshop is to get their solution, their endpoint, the key learnings that they've come out with on the day, and summarise those in a tweetable, which essentially is a summary of that is no more than 280 characters, and then to share that tweetable. I ask them to maybe do 2 or 3 and then pick the best one. And sometimes they combine a couple of tweetables into one new one. This focuses the delegates on the most important parts of their idea. And I actually work with a global financial services company. Whenever they have a new idea that they want to test with customers, they put it out to hundreds of customers around the world who are part of a customer panel, and they only send it out as a tweetable. And the customers vote on whether or not they think that's a great idea, just based on that tweetable. So it is really important that when we've got ideas, we're able to communicate them clearly and succinctly, and the tweetable can help us do that, and it's good fun as well. We're getting there now, so we're on creativity technique number 8, and this one is 3-minute stories. So again, we're towards the end of the workshop. Delegates have generated ideas and selected the most promising ones. And all I do here is ask delegates to create and tell a story that lasts between 2 and 3 minutes, certainly no more than 3 minutes and no less than 2, on what they've got from the day is going to change things for the customer or for the user or for themselves. And it helps them to focus on their main ideas, but also gives them some scope to build on those ideas a little bit further and just give a little bit more depth without going into detail and create a summary. And finally, creativity technique number 9 is called the end. And all I do here is I ask delegates to visualise and draw their story of the workshop itself. So to go back through the day, think about when they first came in, what they did, all the way through the agenda, and to pick out their highlights, their key insights, learning and memorable moments on the way, and to share their story at the end of the day. So I'll get them to do this in small groups, and each small group presents back their themes that they've learned and the highlights from the day in a story format. And it's a really nice way to end the day. Well, I hope you've got loads of great ideas there. Thank you so much for joining me, and I am so eager to hear how you get on with some of these techniques. Do try them and have a look at Royal Research Story Cubes and much more, and happy storytelling. Bye for now.